I saw this discussing film tweet on Reddit about 14 franchises returning with new films in 2024. I had several thoughts about this list, which I'm going to talk about right now. First up, how can the crowd miss you if you never went away? I got through the list and thought to myself, almost a third of these franchises had a film or TV show in the last 18 months. Transformers and John Wick had pretty well received installments not 8 months ago as I typed this. Although the Transformers once again struggled at the box office, Lord of the Rings had a much less appreciated Amazon original TV show at the end of 2022, which I'd have sworn came out last year, but apparently not. Either way, how can the general audience miss you if you never leave? Surely, it's much better to wait at least a few years before having a prequel, a spin-off, or a reboot. Then there are another third of the films that haven't been seen on the silver screen for more than 30 years. Who is clamoring for further Twister, Beverly Hills Cop, and the Crow movies? They all feel a very bottom of the barrel. What have we got in the vault we haven't attempted to reboot, remake, or requel yet? Added to that, this isn't even half of the franchise films coming in 2024. Here's a non-exhaustive list. So, with that in mind, and having done the bare minimum of research, I've ordered the 14 films in the original tweet from the one I'm least excited to the most excited for, so I just can't be bothered even discussing this film. The least excited for position was a hotly contested slot on this list, but in the end, I had to go for Twister, a franchise we haven't seen since 1996. A franchise with one film. Is a film franchise with one film even a franchise? I'd argue no, but that's by the by. Let me know in the comments what constitutes a franchise and how excited you are for these films. A film franchise whose original film was one of those weird breakout hits you got in the mid-90s that had middling reviews, that hit the cultural zeitgeist of the moment and went on to dominate at the box office before consistently being in the rotation on some TV station somewhere for the next 5 to 10 years. In fact, the original actually cemented May as a month where summer blockbuster season starts, finished second in the overall box office list of 1996, and was the 10th highest grossing movie of all time on release, and yet never got a sequel until now. And what is that sequel? Well, I mentioned this film to a friend, and with no other prompt than who the hell wants a Twister sequel, he sent this back, which amazingly is word for word what this film is. It's called Twisters, it's going to highlight climate change, and will almost certainly be a massive CGI-infested pile of garbage writing. I'd put actual money on there being more than one tornado, with the multiple tornadoes joining forces, becoming some form of super tornado, and wrecking somewhere outside of Tornado Alley because climate change, with its messaging being about as subtle as a 50-foot neon billboard falling on your head. And don't get me wrong, I think climate change is hugely important. Probably the most important issue facing humanity. I just have zero hope they'll handle it well. It also has nobody returning from the original film. Bill Paxton has sadly passed away, and Helen Hunt was attached to this at some point, but probably read the script, then sensibly dropped out. Obviously, I have whatever negative excitement is for this film. There's a reason we never got a Twister sequel. The entire idea of doing sequels to certain kinds of movies is just dumb. You either have to go so all of the topic will become silly, or just remake the original film all over again. I'm looking at you, Jaws. I have a feeling this will be a mix of the two, both massively over the top and silly as all hell. Apparently, this has a budget of $200 million, meaning it needs around $500 million just to break even. What coked up nutcase thinks in 2024 that a disaster movie, a genre at least a decade out of vogue, will make $500 million plus at the box office? I expect nothing but a massive bomb in this one's future. The next film on my list was so close to being my least anticipated film. The original Crow movie is one of those perfect time and place films, massively elevated in everyone's minds by the period it releases and the events surrounding the making of it. It perfectly captured the mid-90s teen angst with its grungy, rock, gothic horror aesthetic and vibe at a time when actual goths were a thing. And Nirvana were the biggest band in the world. It also had Brandon Lee give the pitch-perfect performance, then die on set. It's also a visual treat, having some of the best examples of 90s sets and miniatures you are going to see. This might be a controversial statement, but as much as I love the original film, which is a lot, by the way, without these external factors, it would be nowhere near as beloved as it is. And if you don't believe me, then just take a look at the 3 sequels, because, yeah, apparently The Crow has 3 sequels, and they are all universally despised. Which brings me to the new upcoming Crow, which obviously has none of those things going for it, being a remake starring Bill Skarsgård, who is a fine actor, but doesn't strike me as a perfect Eric Draven, and directed by the guy who brought you Ghost in the Shell, which sucked balls harder than a ball-sucking machine. Even worse, it's been stuck in development hell since 2008 and has had about 5 creative teams work on it, with the original pitch being for a reimagining that took away the gothic horror and substituted it with a realistic, gritty, almost documentary-style film. Thanks, I fucking hate it. Beverly Hills Cop is a very 80s comedy property that starred Eddie Murphy and was so played out by the 3rd film in the franchise in the mid-90s, we were down to 11% ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. Whether you are going to like these movies entirely hinges on how funny you find Eddie Murphy. And thankfully, he's returning as Axel for Beverly Hills Cop 4 because I can't imagine the role being recast in some sort of reboot. In a shockingly sensible decision for Hollywood, they've decided to have a direct sequel to a 3rd film with Axel returning to investigate corruption in the police department along with his estranged daughter and her ex-boyfriend. So I guess expect some family comedy hijinks. And this is also a Netflix film, so definitely expect those. On the downside, this movie has been stuck in development hell since the mid-90s. So almost 30 years of development, which is almost never a great sign of quality. As for my level of excitement, I've owned all 3 Beverly Hills Cop movies in a box set for at least 20 years at this point and haven't seen all of them all of the way through because I get halfway through the first one and realize I find Axel Foley's character about as funny as attaching my testicles to a 30-watt battery. So I'm that level of excited for this. Moving on to a live-action Disney spin-off, because apparently the critical and audience reception to the Lion King remake, translated via all of the cocaine in Disney executives' heads, meant we desperately needed a live-action spin-off prequel. I'm convinced that Disney just wants to lose money at this point. Because, yeah, we are getting a prequel about the rise of Mufasa, one of the greatest kings of the Pride Lands. I'm sure we will also find out other entirely pointless stuff like why Scar is called Scar, and how he met the hyenas, etc. Yeah, you know, the usual pointless prequel filler. Looks like it's going to be structured as a pre-existing character telling one of the daughters of Simba and Nala all about her grandfather. Call me cynical, but that's probably purely so that they can get some name recognition with returning voice actors. As for my excitement for this one, well, if it's not already obvious, as a rule, I hate prequels and I hated the live-action remake of Lion King even more than I hate those. So yeah, I genuinely just rather pour Drano into my eyeballs for 2 hours than watch this one. Moving on to the first movie I'll probably actually eventually watch, and it's Ghostbusters. The first 2 Ghostbusters are good. The cartoon was brilliant. Everything else that followed has been awful or entirely meh. Which is how I felt about Ghostbusters Afterlife in 2021, the last time we saw this franchise. That movie obviously did well enough to get a sequel rather than being rebooted, so everyone is returning and moving to New York in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and the iconic firehouse from the first 2 films and the cartoon is going to make an appearance. Along with the original surviving Ghostbusters, who have developed a top-secret ghostbusting lab so they can take on the Death Chill. gripping New York and threatening the Earth with a new ice age. According to Kumail Nanjiani, the filmmakers have taken inspiration from the cartoon series and tried to make a feature-length live-action episode of that show. I don't hate the premise of this, and to be honest, it's probably the first new Ghostbusters film that actually sounds pretty interesting to me. Wasn't a huge fan of Afterlife, thought it was passable, so I'll probably just catch this one on streaming, I'm not going out to the theatre to watch it, put it that way. The original animated Transformers movie from 1986 is the first film I remember watching, and it broke my heart when Optimus Prime died. I cried for a week. Then they brought him back from the dead, and this is why I am a cold, dead, inside, cynical husk of a human being. Thanks, Hasbro. Which brings us to 2024 and Transformers 1, a new animated Transformers film focused on the origins of Optimus Prime and Megatron and how they went from friends to enemies, set on Cybertron. Rather than Earth this time, it's obviously yet another prequel, because apparently we need more of those. Another film I don't really care about that much, but we'll catch on streaming, because as I said previously, Transformers was kind of important to me as a kid, and I kind of enjoyed some of the live-action films, which have gone from a $1 billion per film franchise to one that produces underperformers no matter how good the film is. Case in point, the live-action film we got only last year. Let's hope for them this one does alright this time. I have said previously on this channel that I am not a fan of The Lord of the Rings, so the fact a Lord of the Rings anime prequel is so high on this list says way more about the paucity of quality content before it than it does for this flick. The War of the Rohirrim will tell the story of Helm Hammerhand, a legendary king of Rohan who must defend against an army of Dunlendings. He's a dude who gives his name to Helm's Deep, basically, and the whole story is based on the appendices of the novels. Within 10 years, we will be basing entire Lord of the Rings films and TV series on single sentences from the books at this rate. After the disaster that was the Amazon TV series from 2022, and my own disdain for high fantasy in general, and the Lord of the Ring franchise in particular, I'll be catching this on streaming. I'm kind of intrigued by the switch to anime, and it could be a decent watch. Let's head now into the films I might even venture out of the house to watch. First up, a John Wick spin-off. One of the newer franchises on this list. Actually, probably the only new franchise from the last decade now I think about it. Apparently 9 years is the time needed to get 4 mainline movies out and a decade for a spin-off to happen. Because less than a year after the release of John Wick 4, we're getting Ballerina, a spin-off focusing on Rooney, a character from John Wick 3. Weirdly enough, the one John Wick film I didn't think was great, so I do not remember the character at all. That being said, there are a few reasons to be excited about this film. Firstly, the John Wick films have largely had great action, direction, and cinematography. I also enjoy Ana de Armas, who will be taking the lead role. But there's also reasons to worry. First up, it's a recast, seeing as Unity Phelan played the character in the original film. Added to that, Chad Stahelski, the director of the John Wick series, is only advising on this one, and Len Wiseman will be sat in the director's chair. Hoof's previous credits are the Underworld series, Live Free or Die Hard, and the Total Recall reboot. Hardly an inspiring filmography. The story is going to take place in between John Wick 3 and John Wick 4, so it's a spin-off prequel, and will focus on Rooney hunting down the people who murdered her family. So, a fairly stock narrative. This is probably the first film on this list I'll even think about watching at the cinema. As bad as Len Wiseman's filmography is, I have a soft spot for the Underworld series, Ana de Armas, and the John Wick style of action, so I have a modicum of excitement for this. It's only a modicum though. Let's be honest, I'll probably just stream this as well. The rebooted Planet of the Apes franchise is probably the best reboot franchise that I can remember seeing. I saw all 3 movies in theaters and enjoyed all of them. I don't really know if we need a 4th in the franchise, as the 3rd film wrapped up the storyline, but Disney bought Fox and are desperate to ruin every IP they own, so here we are. This 4th film will see us jump 400 years into the future, where the apes have progressed and the humans have regressed. with a tyrannical ape trying to take over monkey kind in search of forbidden human technology, with humans and apes having to join forces to determine both their futures. It actually sounds pretty bad now I think about it, but I enjoyed the first three well enough and I'm willing to give this a chance. Whether I'll venture outside to watch it purely depends on the reviews. If they're decent, I'm down for this, as a long-time fan of the Apes franchise. Now, we get to the two films on this list I'm actually genuinely excited for. Mad Max Fury Road is the best movie of the last decade, and no, I will not be taking any questions on that one, it's just not up for debate in my mind. As a result, I'm actually excited about Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, which is objectively a shit name for a movie, but if it's even half as good as Mad Max Fury Road was, it will still be better than 90% of the god-awful schlock we get these days. The film's going to focus on Imperator Furiosa and her origins, so it's another prequel, which, yes, I usually hate, and it's a recasting as Anna Taylor-Joy is stepping into Charlize Theron's shoes, another thing I kind of hate. What can I say? I'm a hypocrite who just loves car chases. At least George Miller is returning to write and direct it. I really hope they went mainly practical for the stunts again. If this is a CGI fest, then my disappointment will know no bounds. Just inject this into my veins so I can die all shiny and chrome. Bringing me to the film I'm most excited about on this list. It's Alien Romulus, a Hulu exclusive film. I love the first three Alien films. Yes, I'm an Alien 3 apologist. It's the hill I'm dying on, especially when you look at what came after it in the franchise. Basically endless piles of garbage. Alien Resurrection is a campy 90s action film that has its charms. It's mildly entertaining and I'll happily rewatch it, but it's not a good film. But at least it isn't the prequels, which are unwatchable piles of ass. So at this point, we haven't had a good Alien film in over 3 decades. Almost 4, if you aren't a fan of Alien 3. And basically, my excitement is purely based on nothing beyond it's an Alien film. Because we don't know much about this other than Fede Alvarez is directing, and he's done some decent films. And it's sandwiched between Alien and Aliens, so hopefully, a return to the retro-futuristic style of those flicks. All that being said, Disney is involved, and they just can't catch a break with the films they are making. But by the laws of averages, that would suggest they have to make another good film by pure accident at some point. So maybe this is it. Then we get to the films I just couldn't really be bothered discussing. 2 for obvious reasons. And the other one, well, what can you really say about Bad Boys 4? It's Bad Boys 4. I'm not sure how well this will do because who cares? It's Bad Boys 4. Doesn't even have Michael Bay directing it. At least Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are returning. Bringing me to Despicable Me 4. I'm obviously not excited for this. I'm a middle-aged man, but its existence doesn't offend me anywhere near as much as the films prior to it on this list. Although 6 years between films in a kids franchise seems like eons in kids' ears, because what sort of not changes constantly with children, and a whole bunch of your audience will have aged out of wanting to watch this franchise at this point. And last but not least, we have Wallace and Gromit. I don't think I've seen a Wallace and Gromit anything since I was at school, and I haven't been at school for over 2 decades. I used to love it, but I'm a bit surprised that it's still going and has apparently been putting Shaun the Sheep movies out fairly regularly for a while now. Much like Despicable Me, I'm not really excited for this, but unlike that film, if this was on TV, I'd probably watch it. I think much like 2023, this year is going to be a terrible one at the box office for Hollywood. And frankly, they have nobody but themselves to blame. So that's all from me this week. Thanks for watching, and as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Apparently, it really helps the channel out, and it could do with it.